It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Audacious, explosive and deadly, the detonating pages which targeted hundreds of Hezbollah militants in the Middle East. At least 9 people are dead, thousands injured, and Israel blamed. Its government, though, makes no comment tonight. Also this evening, the woman finally hearing the truth from the husband who admits he raped her and who says he allowed 50 other men to do the same. The security around Donald Trump as he travels back to the campaign trail after the apparent second attempt on his life. One of the heroes of hip-hop for nearly 30 years, but tonight Sean Diddy Combs stands accused of sex trafficking and abuse. Stricter privacy and parental controls. Why Instagram will be hoping parents press like for their new rules for teens. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's coming up in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello, good evening. Hundreds of electronic pages carried by members of the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah exploded today in what appears to have been one of the most audacious attacks ever in Israel's long conflicts in the Middle East. At least 9 people were killed, including Hezbollah fighters. At least 2,750 were injured in the blasts. How the pages were primed to explode is not known, and neither the Israeli military nor government would comment on whether it was behind the attacks. In Lebanon, at least, the source of blame was clear: Hezbollah vowing that Israel would get its fair punishment. From Jerusalem, our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle has this report.
Watch the bottom left corner of the CCTV. In the fruit and veg section of a Lebanese supermarket in southern Beirut, a pager explodes. Over the next half hour, across Beirut, Lebanon, and even parts of Syria, more pagers exploded in a coordinated attack on Hezbollah. Hospitals were put on high alert, and there were calls for blood donations.
We started hearing shouting, and we saw the first injury going down holding his hand, and after it another injury. Some people said that the television exploded, others said the telephone. You know, in the first moments, people weren't still understanding what's happening. Soon we found out a specific device was exploding all over the place.
Israel was immediately blamed for the attack, although the Israeli government hasn't commented.
This is a complete crime against the civilians. What we have seen is a kind of progress in the Israeli crime against the Lebanese. It's against the Lebanese people, it's against the civilians. We hold the Israeli enemy responsible for all of the victims, for all of the martyrs, for all of the wounded. And we believe that the reprisal is coming.
Hezbollah had recently started using pagers rather than mobile phones because they're considered less vulnerable. This attack will have a considerable psychological effect on the group.
So this could have been a hack on the lithium batteries to cause it to explode, but it looks more like explosive devices implanted in this, which would indicate a large supply chain interruption where they're able to intercept these packages, these pagers, implant explosives, and then being able to leverage that to then conduct these types of operations. This is, a very complex, highly sophisticated, probably multi-year type of engagement that would require this type of thing be pulled off, one of the most complex that I've seen ever.
Israel has repeatedly demonstrated its ability to infiltrate deep into its enemies. In November 2020, they assassinated a senior Iranian nuclear scientist using a remote-controlled machine gun that targeted his vehicle near Tehran. And in late July of this year, they took out the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh with a bomb under the bed in the guest house where he was staying in Tehran.
It is actually a point of deflection. It is such a serious attack. It's not only extraordinary, it's also very scary. And I think this time we can expect a very serious response, a retaliation from Hezbollah.
The number of injured is huge, and Hezbollah has vowed retaliation. Tonight, Benjamin Netanyahu has convened an emergency security cabinet meeting to prepare for what happens next.
Well, in a moment, we'll speak to our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes. First, there to Alistair in Jerusalem. As we heard in your report, Alistair, this is both extraordinary and very scary. So what now for the Hezbollah leadership, plunged into a state of shock, no doubt, tonight, but also for the wider conflict in the region?
Well, there are, Anna, a lot of unanswered questions tonight. When was this attack started to be planned? How exactly did the devices explode and how are they detonated? But I think the crucial question for me is why now? Israel, assuming, and everybody does assume they were behind this, clearly had this extraordinary capability and infiltration into Hezbollah's inner communication system and wider network. So why choose this moment to reveal that capability? Was it because perhaps they felt that it was about to be exposed? Is it perhaps because they were taking a preemptive strike because Hezbollah was planning an attack? Or is this the start of a wider Israeli operation against Hezbollah? For 11.5 months now, Israel has been enduring pretty heavy attacks on its northern border. It's got 60 to 80,000 of its civilians displaced from the northern border. And now that the fighting in Gaza is moving to a new, slightly lower tempo phase, the Israeli politicians and the Israeli military are starting to focus their attentions much more on what to do with Hezbollah. And so we'll see what the coming hours bring. Hezbollah, I imagine, are in a state of some chaos at the moment as they try and establish what happened, and their communication network is going to be in disarray. Will Israel try and take advantage of that?
Well, indeed, Deborah, this has wiped out Hezbollah communications. The very nature of this attack surely has ramifications far beyond the Middle East, a way potentially of waging hybrid war in the future.
Yes, and it's important to remember that there's nothing new about countries using novel ways to attack each other. What is unprecedented about what's happened here is the sheer size and scale of the operation. It's a reminder too of the fact that when it comes to war or unconventional war, grey zone warfare, the only limitations are the imagination of the attackers and increasingly the technology that's available to them. And like you say, yes, allies of Israel, enemies of the West will be looking on at what happened in Lebanon and also maybe thinking about raising the risk appetite when it comes to their own acts of unconventional warfare. The heads of the CIA and MI6 only a few days ago warned about how Russia is waging a, in their words, reckless campaign of sabotage and arson attacks across Europe. It's an area of sub-threshold, under the threshold of war conflict that's taking place around the world and is only intensifying.
Deborah, thank you. A French 71-year-old admitted in court today that he was a rapist and accused 50 men on trial with him of the same crime. Dominique Pellicot accepted he had repeatedly drugged his wife and invited the men to rape her while she lay unconscious. It is a crime which has shocked his home country and raised awareness of sexual violence in the home far beyond, as our correspondent Alice Porter reports from Avignon.
Arriving in court to face the man accused of masterminding mass sexual abuse against her for over a decade. 72-year-old Giselle Pellicot thought she was in a normal, loving marriage. But unbeknown to her, she was being drugged by her then husband, assaulted by him, and allegedly raped by more than 50 strangers. 71-year-old Dominique Pellicot is accused of recruiting the men online, inviting them to the couple's home and filming them abusing his wife while she was unconscious. At a court in Avignon, Pellicot gave testimony for the first time and admitted all the charges against him. Today, I maintain that I am a rapist, like the others concerned in this room. They all knew her condition before they came. They knew everything. They cannot say otherwise. Of his ex-wife, he said, she did not deserve this. Giselle's decision to go public about her ordeal has prompted a national conversation about drugging someone without consent in order to assault them. An anti-drugging campaign is being led by the French MP Sandrine Josso, who was also spiked by someone she knew.
When someone's drugged, if the drugs that are used are sedatives, it's impossible to have a debate about consent, because somebody who's asleep is incapable of giving consent.
Most of the men on trial deny having raped Giselle Pellicot, claiming that Dominique Pellicot made them believe they were taking part in the couple's sexual fantasy.
If
we listen to Pellicot, the consent never happened and the rapes took place. That is his position.
The men who came to the couple's home were allegedly told by Dominique Pellicot to not wear aftershave or smoke. Some of the defendants say they were told by Dominique this was because he didn't like the smell. They didn't necessarily think that these were steps to stop Giselle from finding out what was happening to her. There are still men who took part in the alleged rapes who have yet to be identified. The trial will go on until December and will continue to horrify those in France and abroad. Alice Porter, Sky News, Avignon.
Donald Trump returns to the election trail tonight, just 2 days after that second apparent attempt on his life. What effect the alleged actions of Ryan Ruth might have on undecided voters' intentions is not clear. But as we discovered in Michigan today, it hasn't done him any harm with those who already back him. Well, the former president is speaking in the city of Flint in 2 hours' time, and our US correspondent Martha Kellner is there. Martha.
That's right, Anna. Donald Trump expected here in under 2 hours. He's currently on his way from Florida to Flint, Michigan, which is where I am. It will be interesting, given that this is his first public appearance since that apparent attempt on his life on Sunday afternoon. Interesting to see what he looks like, how he interacts with this crowd, if there's any sign of nervousness, given that he's in a big arena and this was the second apparent attempt on his life in just over 2 months. He's already won the support of the loyalists here, but I've been in the wider state of Michigan speaking to voters to work out what they think, if these attempts on his life have had any impact on him. And this is one of the key swing states, Anna. This is a state which he may well have to win if he's to get back into the White House.
That's good-looking stuff right there.
After the assassination attempt comes the glad handing. Donald Trump meeting the police officers who caught the man who allegedly tried to kill him.
Thank you very much.
He's pivoting now back to the campaign trail. And this is where he's heading, Flint, Michigan. Known for a water crisis which infected its drinking supply, killing scores. A city shaped by the auto industry and shattered by its decline. They have real problems here that feel more urgent than political rhetoric.
If you wear it, if you eat it, if you use it, what brought it to you? A truck. What's the truck run on? Diesel fuel. What's the price of diesel right now? It's friggin' ridiculous. Your eggs are up, your milk's up, farmers hurting, truckers hurting, everybody's hurting.
Trump, I'm a supporter, you know. It was scary what happened with the attempted assassination, but, you know, thankfully he's all right and I think he's thriving.
He's saying that Biden and Harris's words have meant the bullets are flying.
I really do think that they are responsible for, you know, maybe not calling out somebody to do it, but, you know, their words triggered somebody.
Investigations continue into the suspect Ryan Ruth and his motivations. President Biden has called for more resources for the embattled Secret Service. Trump spoke about the shooting for the first time on X.
All of a sudden we heard shots being fired in the air, and I guess probably 4 or 5, and it sounded like bullets. There's a lot of rhetoric going on. Right. A lot of people think that the Democrats, when they talk about threat to democracy and all of this.
He's blaming Harris and Biden, in his words, for sending bullets flying. in the swing state of Michigan. These are the voters he's speaking to. But Gary, an independent, is unconvinced.
That's 2 attempts. I was like, that's kind of crazy, you know what I'm saying? When they saying people was in Ohio eating cats and dogs, now they got school bomb attempts and all that. So the rhetoric on both sides need to calm down.
So it's not one side or the other, it's a collective responsibility?
Yes, it's a collective responsibility.
At the arena where Trump will speak tonight, security was enhanced. He will almost certainly, on this stage, repeat his condemnation of what he calls the Democrats' dark and divisive rhetoric. But Donald Trump himself is hardly known for being a calming, unifying political presence. The truth is, even as the political violence ratchets up, little is likely to change. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris had a phone conversation earlier today following his conversation with President Biden yesterday. It was characterised by the White House as a cordial conversation. They said that the Vice President reiterated that there's no place, in her words, for political violence in our country. It will be interesting to see whether Donald Trump abides by what he's been calling for over the past couple of days, which is a dialing down of the political rhetoric. There's certainly a lot of excitement from people here to hear him speak in just under 2 hours' time.
Yes, and we'll certainly take that live when it happens. Martha, thank you. Well, you may know him as Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, or even as plain Sean Combs, but the rapper turned music mogul will now also be known as an alleged abuser of women. In custody tonight, charged with sex trafficking and racketeering over a near 15-year period. He pled not guilty in court. The prosecutor said there may be more charges to come. Our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer, has more.
Once one of the most powerful and respected names in hip-hop, for Sean Combs, known to many as P. Diddy, his much-lauded business empire now described by prosecutors as a criminal enterprise. Details of a criminal investigation into the star's conduct first came to light after raids on his mansions in LA and Miami last March. On Monday, he was arrested at this Manhattan hotel, and we now know more of the criminal charges he faces, including sex trafficking and racketeering. These some of the guns he and those closest to him used to intimidate. Claims that from 2008 his physical abuse was recurrent and widely known. And evidence, prosecutors say, of a pervasive pattern of abuse from Combs towards women, including that he regularly plied them with drugs, forcing them to participate in orchestrated sex performances with sex workers that he'd fly in.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics.
Claims the rapper hit, kicked, even dragged his victims by their hair during some sex performances, and when injured, made his employees prevent them from leaving until their wounds had healed. Lawyers for Combs saying the rapper is innocent and can prove it.
He's going to fight this with all of his energy and all of his might and the full confidence of his lawyers. And I expect a long battle with a good result for Mr. Combs.
In the last 12 months, Sean Combs has faced a flood of multiple sex abuse lawsuits, but criminal charges are a first. A pariah now in the music world, his lavish lifestyle on hold, detained in police custody until his case comes to trial. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Alleged sexual abuse much closer to home is not being investigated properly. Apologies. 2 young women have told Sky News. They say they were repeatedly raped as part of an organised child sexual abuse ring in Hull, but that Humberside police have diverted officers looking into the crimes to deal with cases from the summer riots. They spoke to our home editor, Jason Farrell, a warning you may find what they told him distressing.
They were teenagers when we first filmed them. Now young women, they're still waiting for justice. Sarah says she still sees the men who abused her as a child in town, one of them recently.
He was so close to me and I felt so sick that he'd been anywhere near me. It's a horrible, horrible feeling that comes. I can see him sometimes in my local Tesco's. I can be doing a food shop and I'll see them. And it just ruins your day because all day you think, they've seen me. So are they going to tell their friend that they've seen me? Are they going to be waiting outside for me? All these different emotions and thoughts just run through your head.
The case into the alleged organised sexual abuse of girls in Humberside was closed in 2021, then reopened after a Sky News investigation. An independent body concluded Operation Marksman was flawed, and we were told a new team of officers would bring fresh eyes to the case. 2 years on from that, this is what the women have been told.
They said they've just finished reading through everything, all the evidence from the previous investigation, and now they're starting at the beginning, which I think 2 years is a long time for it to only just be at the beginning of the investigation.
So how did you feel when they told you we were just starting?
I was really angry, to be honest, because it made us think kind of how long is it going to go on for? And this all started in 2016, 2017, so it's been going on long enough already.
Anna and Sarah, not their real names, have written a joint letter of complaint to Humberside's chief constable, which says that when they met with officers this month, they were told resources have been diverted away from their case to deal with investigations into the summer riots.
It's frustrating because, I don't know, obviously it is serious what they're looking into, but I do believe that men that are going around raping and abusing young girls is more important than the riots.
What do you think?
I think it's a joke. Why are you so concerned that a couple of people have set a bin on fire in the middle of the town centre, but young children, young girls, are out there being raped and forced to do things that they should never ever have to do?
The government says combating violence against women and girls is a priority. For these young women, it doesn't feel like it. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Now, riverbanks are being reinforced and thousands evacuated as water levels continue to rise in some parts of Central Europe. Heavy rainfall has caused the devastating flooding, with another deluge set to hit the region this week. At least 22 deaths have been reported, with several people swept away in floodwaters. A firefighter also died during a rescue operation in Austria. Well, Slovakia and Hungary are preparing for potential impact this week as the River Danube, the second largest in Europe, continues to swell, with experts expecting it to peak over 8 metres. Further south, authorities in Croatia are closely monitoring river levels. Meanwhile, heavy rain is forecast for northern Italy in the coming days. In Poland, where 5 people have already died, floods continue to impact the southwest of the country. The city of Wrocław now bracing for heavy rainfall, and authorities are working to strengthen riverbanks there. In 1997, floods in the region killed more than 100 people when major rivers overflowed. Well, Sky's Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins is in Wrocław and sent this report.
For these people in Poland, the only way out now is by boat. 80% of the homes here in Lebanon have been flooded, inundated by water bursting out of raging rivers. With little warning, even after the rain has stopped. Tadeusz says it's up to his roof. My children have lost everything, he tells me. There wasn't any time. They told us there'd be water, but we didn't know it would be so high. Military vehicles scour the streets for those still trapped. Some have managed to scramble to safety. Others, like Ludmila and her family, grabbed what they could and left. Refugees from Ukraine, they've lost their home for a second time. It's very hard. We're adults, but my little one will remember all of this, she says. In Poland, a disaster's been declared, but Storm Boris has left large parts of Europe submerged, wreaking havoc on the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania and Austria.
When you look around this town, everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Authorities are doing what they can to hold back the waters. In Wrocław, they're not taking any chances after a catastrophic flood cut off the city in 1997. Dagna lived through that flood. She remembers these scenes, the people stranded, left homeless, the life lost. She's hoping defences hold this time round.
Some of the stop barriers has been overcome, so we know that some incidents may happen, and then it can still cause a lot of damages like in the past. So I think that older generation is very worried.
And they aren't the only ones waiting for the floods. River levels are also predicted to continue rising in Hungary and Germany in the coming days. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Poland.
Glasgow will be the new host of the 2026 Commonwealth Games, 12 years after they were last held there. The city stepped in after the Australian state of Victoria pulled out. The Scottish Government said the Games will be scaled back and there'll be no public funding for the event. Now, if we're another political leader, you might think it was a microphone mistake, but when it's the king of the political stunt, you suspect he may just have been happy for us to hear him asking you, out of tune, to take a chance on me. Voters, of course, already did that at the election, giving the Liberal Democrats 72 seats. And Sir Ed said he wanted to consign the defeated Conservatives to the history books. Our political correspondent Rob Powell reports now from Brighton.
From jet skiing to volleyball to warming up this morning with a game of tennis, Lib Dem conferences felt like a greatest hits of the election campaign. On message, if not in tune.
Take a chance on me, leave me, let me go and be alright.
Ed Davey stuck to familiar attacks as he tries to replace the Tories as a more credible opposition.
We can't let them off the hook after the chaos and misery they've caused. Friends, our job is to consign the Conservative Party to the history books.
After sharing the story of caring for his son, the Lib Dem leader said he was humbled by the response.
People have kindly reached out to say that they know how it feels, especially the worry you have about what's going to happen after you're gone. No one will ever hold him the way we hold him. No one will ever love him the way we love him.
On policy, the idea of an NHS task force to address winter pressures.
What if we invested now to make the NHS winter-proof? The government could and should make this year the last winter crisis in our NHS. Let's keep on winning so we can make it happen.
This has been a conference of celebration as well as a bit of soul-searching. Ed Davey believes a relentless focus on health and care gives him a big enough message to straddle several voter groups. But can the party committed to rejoining the EU and upping taxes on the wealthy really also speak for the once true blue Tory shires? Are you worried that some of your sort of more traditional grassroots might get a bit frustrated that you're not talking about the things they really care about?
Not remotely. Ed Davey said it loud and clear. You cannot be free if you are languishing on an NHS waiting list.
A lot of your policies don't sound very right-wing at the moment.
Well, I'm not a kind of left-right kind of guy. Liberal Democrats, we're not talking about left and right. We're talking about the priorities that the people have on the ground.
Ed Davey leaves conference having dug the Lib Dems out of the depths they reached after the coalition. But with his sights now set on overtaking the Tories, he may need to manage the political growing pains that can come with electoral success. Rob Powell, Sky News in Brighton.
Now, the social media giant Meta may have earned a small like from parents, if not some of their children today. It's announced what it called a major safety update in which the accounts of under-16s on Instagram will be turned off unless parental oversight. Campaigners said the company should have moved sooner, as our correspondent Ashley Horenag reports.
The time these young footballers spend on the pitch is almost the same as the amount spent online. Now, one of the biggest social media platforms is tackling them and others their age. Instagram now has new rules.
I think it's going to be really good to ensure people's safety online.
their friends are only going to see their posts, right? So if that's better, they're going to have more confidence in posting, knowing that like people they don't know aren't going to see it.
Introducing Instagram teen accounts.
Under 16s will now have automatic teen accounts with parental controls as the default setting.
Plus, teens under 16.
Parents and guardians with oversight of the accounts will be able to limit the times they can access it and who they interact with. Children will only be able to change these settings with their parents' permission, giving them full control.
It might make the app a little bit less attractive to the teenagers, that they might prefer to use other apps, and they always find a way around these rules by using something else. But I think it's a really good step in the right direction to know what they're looking at.
Some parents have campaigned for years for better protection for children. Ian Russell's daughter took her own life after viewing self-harm content.
The countries of the world are uniting and saying that the platforms haven't done well enough and have to do better. So this is why I think these announcements are being made by Meta. If they can do these measures now, which don't seem that complicated in some ways, you have to ask why they didn't take these steps sooner, because if they had done, they would have protected far more young people and maybe saved some innocent young lives as well.
What's not changed is the same algorithms are sending the same content.
I think you have to give an element of freedom to teenagers. You can't wrap them up in bubble wrap forever, but at the same time you want to protect them and keep them safe. And obviously there is a lot of danger online.
The online safety bill that's expected to pile on pressure to address this won't come for months. For the tech giant, these changes mark a major change in policy, but for some, it still feels light on protection and privacy. Ashna Harinag, Sky News.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by the broadcaster and commentator Ali Miraj and the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman. Welcome and great to see both of you. Coming up then, the pager explosions dominate the front pages. This from the Daily Mail, for example, its headline, Israel's exploding pagers put the Middle East on the brink. We will return with that in just a moment.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, our top stories this evening. Hundreds of pages are reported to have exploded at the same time across Lebanon today, leaving 9 people dead, targeting Hezbollah fighters. It's been reported that more than 2,700 people were wounded. Hezbollah has blamed Israel and has vowed to respond. A French man accused of drugging his wife and letting dozens of men rape her tells a court he is a rapist, and he says the 50 men also on trial knew what they were doing. And Donald Trump returns to the public stage tonight, 2 days after an apparent second assassination attempt. He will be addressing crowds in Michigan. Let's bring you some breaking news just coming into us tonight. The Princess of Wales has returned to work with a meeting behind the scenes at Windsor Castle. That is according to the court circular. It follows Kate's announcement via this video message last week, if you remember, that she had finished her chemotherapy following her cancer diagnosis early this year. Well, the court circular reads, the Princess of Wales, joint patron of the Royal Foundation of the Prince and Princess of Wales, this afternoon held an early years meeting at Windsor Castle. Court circular, of course, documents the engagements of the royal family, whether they are in public or behind palace walls. Palace has not issued any pictures of that meeting. The last time she attended a private meeting at Windsor Castle for the Royal Foundation was in December 2023, and her only engagements on the court circular this year are her attendance at Trooping the Colour and her appearance at Wimbledon. And certainly the palace suggesting last week that the princess is only likely to return to light duties for now, attending a handful of public engagements before the end of the year. Very committed, though, we know, to early years, 0 to 5. It's long been one of the key elements that she's working on, and very involved in the Royal Foundation as well, we are told. So the Princess of Wales returning to work with that private meeting at Windsor Castle. Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the broadcaster and commentator Ali Miraj and the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman. Lovely to see both of you. Well, plenty to discuss. Let's take a look at the front pages then, starting with the Financial Times, leading with the deadly attacks in Lebanon, in which pages were blown up, reportedly in an attempt to target members of Hezbollah. The Telegraph says Israel is suspected of the attack, where thousands of pages injured almost 3,000 people. The Guardian reports that Hezbollah vows to strike back. Front of the Times, same story, simultaneous detonations maim thousands in Lebanon. The Daily Mail warns that Israel's pages puts the Middle East on the brink. The Metro reporting on praise in court for the bravery of murder victim Hannah Hunt, who phoned 999 as her mother and sister were being attacked, only to be shot with a crossbow herself before police could arrive. And on the front of the Express, the winter fuel allowance, as campaigners warn of disaster if it's not restored for pensioners. Well, don't forget, scan the QR code that you'll see on screen during the programme, and you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you listen to our guests. So let's head to Ali and to Jenny. And obviously kicking off with the extraordinary incidents in Lebanon and Syria, indeed. Exploding pages wreak havoc among Hezbollah, wiping out their communications. But why now and how? There are so many questions.
This is an incredibly serious attack and a real feat. In terms of logistics, in terms of intelligence, it's a technical feat. Of course, Israel has not commented on it, but everybody is assuming that it's Israel. When Israel does launch attacks like this overseas, it never confirms or denies. But the scale of this, the audacity of this, is quite something. And more than anything, I mean, this is, 3,000 people injured, at least 9 people killed, hundreds of people really seriously wounded. But the real injury, you know, on top of this is psychological, because what Israel has shown, if it is Israel behind this, and let's assume that it is that they can penetrate the communications network of Hezbollah. And what's interesting is they've decided to show their hand now and say, look, you know, we can interrupt your supply chain, we can cause you serious damage. And there is this brinkmanship, this posturing of saying, you know, look what we can do, we're going to show you that we can do it now. And it's suggesting that the kind of locus of the sort of centre of gravity of war in Israel is moving away from Gaza and towards Lebanon. And this is a really very serious provocation. Imagine if something like this happened on our soil. It's a really, really big deal. And, you know, the next few days are going to be critical.
No, it feels for many like a weaponisation of the very electronic tools we rely on, albeit in the 1980s form of, you know, word of mouth and pages, which the Hezbollah leadership had switched to because it feared smartphones allowed them to be tracked after a series of assassinations. So they went backwards in time and laid themselves vulnerable. Question for many is this a crime of the supply chain? Has this been tampered with, these new pages they bought, or how did this happen?
Well, it's very interesting because Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, was actually imploring his operatives, if you like, to dispense with their mobile phones only months ago and to use pages, a more primitive form of technology. And clearly there has been, I'm not an expert on how these things work, but it seems to be some sort of infiltration into the supply chain. It's a very, very innovative attack. Clearly, Israel's not accepted responsibility for it, but it would not be the first time.
I mean, just a warning, these are pictures of one of the attacks.
Very
on
disturbing.
Screen. So, I mean,
very, very disturbing. But it's interesting that Jenny says it's a provocation, because the Israelis would argue, well, hang on a second. I mean, we're fighting battles on multiple fronts here. In Gaza from Hamas, in the north with Hezbollah as well, they're firing rockets. So all bets are off, and we need to send a message to these guys, which is exactly why they took out Fouad Shukr, who is a leading commander of Hezbollah, and also Ismail Haniyeh from Hamas. So I guess that's the argument they would give. The danger is, now what's the response?
Well, absolutely, which is the Daily Mail, Israel's exploding pages. Israel's, in commas, obviously, put the Middle East on the brink. You know, who responds and how? Israel has already said that its northern border, returning its residents who have fled, is now a stated war aim. You know, why now? I repeat that question, why now? Was it their belief that Hezbollah was about to plan something, or has Israel planned something and now effectively taken out Hezbollah fighters, but also their communication structure?
Or does Israel feel that it can now go so far that is not going to be reined in, that hasn't been reined in thus far since last October, that it can get away? I mean, it only has 4 stated war aims, and this is one of them, is to have people move back into the north of Israel. There is a certain aspect of this, which is that it is, in one respect, a very targeted attack, but it's also indiscriminate. One of the people who was killed was a 10-year-old girl. So
who's going to pick up the page when it goes beep, 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 as we're told?
Well, exactly. And but the issue is, I think, that any nation that would have an attack like this happen on its soil would have to think about how to respond. And we know, of course, Hezbollah is backed by Iran. There has been this tinderbox constantly over the past year, these questions of what is going to push things over the edge in the Middle East. And this is as close as it's got. I mean, it's really incredibly febrile. But yes, as you say, the question is, why now? Why is Israel showing its hand now?
Yeah, the Financial Times as well, saying 8 killed, the numbers changing obviously all the time, as Hezbollah members' low-tech pages explode in Lebanon, the footage that we've just shown as well. Israel has obviously killed Hamas militants in the past with booby-trapped mobile devices. It's widely believed to have been behind a major computer virus attack on Iran's nuclear programme back in 2010. But this is incredibly sophisticated. It shows a sense of long-term planning, possibly, as I said, by infiltrating the supply chain. So the investigation now is, who made these pages? Where did they come from? Which nations did they ship through? Because we all need to find this out, don't we?
Well, I mean, it's absolutely extremely innovative attack. And I think that Hezbollah will be feeling very embarrassed tonight by this. and will clearly be thinking about what its response will be. And indeed, Iran will be thinking about that too, because one of the individuals who was also injured in this attack was the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon. So, I mean, this whole Iran-Israel standoff continues. I mean, we've had exchange, obviously, Iran responding to the Israeli attacks, which they deny on certain Iranian personnel abroad, overseas. That already happened. You've had senior operatives of Hamas killed in Lebanon before. So the problem of all this is, where does peace arise in this whole scenario? That's the issue. On the one hand, you've got Hamas that wants to eradicate Israel. On the other hand, you've got Benjamin Netanyahu, who is in a box. He knows that he's cornered. He knows that if he doesn't continue this war, he'll be out of the door politically. He's in a very, very fragile situation at home, supported by some very extreme elements of this. And you've also got now Hezbollah on the northern flank that on the back of this are going to have to be seen to respond in some way. A very, very dangerous situation is unfolding before our eyes and has been unfolding for many months.
Well, while you want to say one sentence very quickly, just to show The Guardian as well, Hezbollah vows to strike back, which is, exactly the point you're making.
On the question of the supply chain, though, it is very interesting that at some point Israel had access to these pages. And, I mean...
No, Israel, potentially,
allegedly,
possibly,
potentially,
according to,
in inverted commas, Israel had access to these pages and decided to turn them into an explosive device. But the very fact that they had access to the communications, the method of communications, is in itself incredibly critical. And the fact that they chose not to intercept whatever those communications were, or perhaps they were intercepting it, but they chose to turn those into weapons, is a very significant thing in itself, because, of course, this is why it's so psychologically powerful. They were showing not only can we target you, but we can target the way you communicate with each other, and we are listening, so we can hurt you, but you also cannot talk to one another, you cannot plan anything.
Yeah, infiltration, penetration of an extreme level, you're right. We will keep an eye on that story, certainly. It's truly, truly fascinating, truly scary, I think, for many people. Coming up next, the controversy around favours and gifts for the Starmers doesn't seem to be going away. That and more after the break.
And now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, and it's evident that the boat is seriously overcrowded. This is one of the most severe viruses in the world. I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
The biggest party Tripoli has ever seen.
That's it. It got us then. There's a lot of action going on, a lot of hits going in still. We aim to be the best and the most trusted place in news.
Clearly not had very much to eat at all. A lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at her arms. I can put my entire hand round.
This is the cocktail of drugs which the doctors at this hospital have been giving their coronavirus patients. Made for people who want clarity in an uncertain world.
Mother Nature can be vicious, absolutely savage.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Whoa! Close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want to jump in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me tonight, Ali Miraj and Jenny Kleeman. Welcome back to both of you. Let's head to the front page of the Telegraph, shall we? Small story, but a story not going away. This is what else the PM and his wife were in receipt of. Ali.
Well, apparently, Lady Starmer enjoyed 2 Taylor Swift concerts. I mean, given the fact that they're like gold dust, I mean, not once but twice. And this is on the back of the £5,000 wardrobe gate issue, which apparently some clothes were not declared properly in the Register of Members' Interest. Look, it was very interesting that Barry Gardiner yesterday, who's a prominent Labour MP, refused to answer actually on LBC to one of my colleagues, Ian Dale, when he was asked, do you think that people who have got a combined income of £200,000 a year should be asking donors to be buying their clothes? And the answer came back no. So it's very interesting because it seems a bit like glass houses and stones. I mean, if you're going to take the Tories to task, and they should be taken to task, I've always found it slightly unsavoury that even Tony Blair used to be going to, what was he hanging around with?
Sylvia Berlusconi.
Sylvia Berlusconi. You had Boris Johnson in Mustique. I mean, why can't these people just pay for their own holidays and their own clothes? Look, I do think it's important to look smart. I mean, Starmer and Lady Victoria Starmer are both looking very smart. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, says they're doing it for the nation. It's very important. Yes, of course you need to look smart. But at a time when you're cutting winter fuel payments for pensioners, it does stick in their throat a bit, doesn't it?
But maybe there should be a bit of a budget. So on the one
That's
stage,
a good point.
you look amazing,
Good point.
and that's job done. But if you're going to criticise wallpaper in Downing Street, all the other things that Labour has criticised over the years, then you've set yourself a different standard.
Well,
and that's
I think that's the thing.
Difficulty here.
I think Keir Starmer needs to be boring and spotless. That is kind of why people voted for him, is that he was saying we are turning a page on being suspicious of, politicians that are in it for themselves. And the fact that this story is not going away is really bad news for him, to already have a slightly bad smell about him when he should be being boring and spotless does not bode well for the months and years to come.
Jenny, Insta, teen accounts for 13 to 16-year-olds.
Yes.
Parental controls automatically on, good or bad idea?
Well, what's so funny is we were always told this was impossible. You can't rein in these platforms. This is unworkable. But then all of a sudden, when regulatory action is about to come into place, these big giants want to get ahead of it. Of course, it's a good idea, but all of these things are only ever motivated by money. There has been a sea change in how we think about mobile phones as well as social media. They're just trying to to find a way to still have young people on these platforms, even though we are also suspicious and trying to ban smartphones in schools. And that is because they want young people to make their social networks on Meta, on Instagram, because once you've made those networks, it's very difficult to move. As I know, as somebody who has spent a long time on Twitter and doesn't enjoy it very much there, I'm embedded in there because that's where all my connections are. They want people to be embedded as early as possible. They're making these concessions. It's great that things are going to be slightly safer for young people, but we all know that the way to keep young people safe is for parents to be really engaged in what they're doing online, which is more than just parental controls.
Can you do, in 20 seconds, teachers will be allowed to work from home?
Well, teachers are apparently going to be allowed to work from home in their free periods when they're lesson planning. It's a bit ironic, though, that teachers are going to be allowed to work from home. Apparently, it's to retain them. But I think it's also a question of morale and discipline in schools, which is causing so many teachers to leave the profession, not just being able to work from home.
Ali Miraj, Jenny Kleeman, thanks to both of you. Look forward to more in the 11. Here's the weather, though. Well, weather conditions will remain very quiet for the next few days thanks to high pressure, but this is also likely to bring overnight fog. Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England look to be at the greatest risk from mist and fog. Very limited visibility over morning, while England and Wales will see extensive cloud in central and eastern areas. West Wales and the southwest will have a bright start to the day. The cloud cover elsewhere will slowly thin and break through the morning. Mist and fog further north will clear to leave sunny skies, temperatures reaching the high teens Celsius over northern parts of the country. The south will be warmer. Top stories next on Sky News at 11 when our press preview continues. The build-up to Donald Trump's return to the campaign trail will be live in Flint in Michigan.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.